We're going to be in the book of John this afternoon. And in order for us to get a better understanding of the stories found in this book, we have to first know who the author John was. See, John was probably in his teens when he was following Jesus. The Jewish culture made it customary for a child to begin his religious training at the age of 5 years old and to continue until 12 and 13. A young boy. If a boy was intelligent and interested in continuing his religious studies, he would then seek a rabbi to disciple him and would follow and pattern his life after him until the age of 30 years old. If this pattern was consistent with the followers of Jesus, some of them may have joined Jesus as early as the age of 13. Wow. And they would have still been teenagers at the time of Jesus' death, resurrection, and ascension. See, although the Bible doesn't give us the exact ages of the disciples of Jesus, it is likely that they were all between the ages of 13 and 30. John was likely the youngest, and Peter likely the oldest because he was married. Interesting, right? John lived the longest, passing away in the last decade of the first century, according to church history. 60 years after walking with Jesus. John experienced 60 years of church growth. Even if John were in his 90s when he died, he would have been no more than 30 years old at the time he was with Jesus. John was the disciple that Jesus said on the cross, "Behold your mother. Woman, behold your son." Scholars say John was probably in his 20s at the time of the crucifixion. But what's the purpose of this book? What's the purpose of the Gospel of John? The author himself cites the purpose of the Gospel of John as follows in John chapter 20, verse 31. "But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in his name." Some scholars suggest the original audience were the Christians of Hellenized background. Jewish Christian group could have been expanded over time through the addition of converts from the world of Greek paganism. Some were also Samaritans. The central conflict in this gospel involves the Jewish authorities on one hand and Jesus and his followers on the other hand. John lived to witness this conflict. He saw Jesus proving himself to be the Son of God, and he lived the rest of his life teaching the second generation believers to hold on to this faith. He also sought to correct a false teaching that was spreading in the first century. John was one of the sons of Zebedee, and his brother's name was James. He came from a family of fishermen, and Jesus called for them to leave everything behind and to follow him. There are 7 miracles mentioned in the book of John. 7. The first is changing of water to wine in John chapter 2. The second, healing the royal official's sons in John chapter 4. The third, healing the paralytic at the pool of Bethesda, John 5. And the fourth, feeding over 5,000 with fish and loaves, John 6. The fifth, walking on water, John 6, verse 15. The sixth, healing a man born blind. And the seventh, raising Lazarus from the dead. 7 miracles specifically mentioned in this book. This is not a coincidence. 7 is a biblical number that we know represents completion. And John, the author, did not make it a coincidence to mention 7 miracles and ending the last one in resurrection. He was highlighting once again and proving the point that Jesus was God. I can only imagine the adventure it must have been to physically follow Jesus in your teens. No day was probably the same. It sounds like it was a mixture of adventure, comedy, horror, all in one. One thing's for sure, when you're following Jesus, you won't be bored. You didn't know what would happen today. There's a story that's found in Mark chapter 5. When Jesus heals Jairus' daughter when he gets to this synagogue leader's house. And it says in verse 37 that he did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John. Only 3 he allowed to come in the house with him. On another occasion, we see in Mark chapter 9 that Jesus takes Peter, James, and John, the same 3 again, and leads them up on a high mountain apart by themselves, and he was transfigured before them. His clothes become shining, exceedingly white like snow, such as no laundry on earth can whiten them. And Elijah appeared to them with Moses, and they were talking with Jesus. And a cloud came and overshadowed them, and a voice came out of the cloud, "This is my beloved Son. Hear him." Suddenly, when they had looked around, they saw no one anymore, only Jesus. There's a reason why John was one of the people Jesus chose to reveal himself to. It's safe to say that Jesus trusted him. He trusted him with his mother, and he trusted him to share his truth, the way, and the life.